Assessment. It's a word that immediately evokes academic evaluation, a grade, a degree of success or failure. Whether it triggers anxiety or serves as a stimulus to complete a course of study, the final grade is an extrinsic motivator. It rarely makes learning enjoyable and meaningful. However, in educational sciences, no paradigm today is based on the final mark only. For decades, there has been a postulate that summative assessment must be accompanied by formative assessment. Summative assessment is like a final certification. Normally, it makes sense, yes, but often arrive too late to change the outcome. Formative assessment, on the other hand, is a compass. It's a process of continuous observation that allows you, the educator, to recalculate the path in real time, guiding the student more effectively toward the goals. In this video, we'll discuss the value of formative assessment and the tools that allow for reliable ongoing and of course, assessment, the summative one. Of course, this is a quick overview. For the deep dive into assessment theories, I invite you to download and read Module 4 of the handbook. Let's break from metaphors and explain what formative assessment can actually be. It's a process that begins with observation, followed by analysis, and concludes with feedback. Observation can be general, searching for any signal. Think about visual observation. When I explain a concept, I look at the cameras. If I see a participant frowning or tilting their head, that could be meaningful. It's something I can evaluate in terms of attitude. Feedback follows, which can be explicit. I see some confused face, let me rephrase that example, or less explicit if I rephrase the example without commenting. Assessment is often invisible. It occurs informally, embedded into the flow of the lesson. While this may seem trivial, although it requires experience to master, formative observation can be structured. Another example, in fact, is observing prior knowledge. Let's say I'm starting a new model. Before showing my slides, I start a discussion to assess their level. If I realize the group already has a perfect grasp of the basics, I have to make a decision. I could skip the first 10 slides I've prepared. I could literally trash part of my lesson plan to raise the level of the conversation, and that would be fair. In summary, formative assessment is a dynamic process, guides teaching, a constant self-assessment for the teacher, if the teaching is working of course, and throughout feedbacks, guides learning. And this has nothing to do with giving a grade at the end of the learning module, okay? But what's the real challenge in formative assessment? The challenge is being able to observe what's significant. For this reason, no type of assessment, neither summative nor formative, can ignore a rubric. Sometimes we need a formal assessment. We need to evaluate a project or a single task. Subjectivity is a limit to the reliability of the assessment. Why did someone get assessed differently than someone else? Was I tired? Was I biased? Often, subjectivity is impossible to eliminate completely, but we can compensate for it. We can base our evaluation on a uniform, replicable, and quantifiable method. The method is the rubric. The rubric is not just a tool to defend your assessment against complaints. It forces you to be explicit and clear. This has two positive effects. 1. Students can know exactly what the objectives are and what they need to do to demonstrate. From this perspective, it has a strong formative function. 2. It helps to regulate your assessment. Not only does it allow you to be consistent, but it also reminds you of the meaningful dimension to observe. Let me show you basics of a rubric in 30 seconds on a blank Excel sheet. First, I define criteria in rows. Let's use a realistic dimension to be observed, like knowledge, it regards contents, use of language, we mean technical language, jargon, and original re-elaboration. Now, the levels in columns. They can be basic, intermediate, and advanced. You can add more levels, of course. And now comes the most important part, call it indicators or descriptors. They are proxy for each level. For knowledge, basic could mean recognizes key concepts. While advanced means applies concepts to new unseen cases, and so on. Do you see the value of this? For the learner, this is a map. It creates instructional transparency. They know exactly what they need to do to reach the advanced level. Surely, you'll have to define more clear and complete descriptors than my example. And for you, it allows you to remain uniform. It forces you to reflect before you even start on exactly what you want to observe. Even the most expert professor benefits from a rubric because it converts a vague impression into a measurable observation. I remind you that an activity from the Train the Trainer's Toolkits Module 4 is designing a rubric for your training course. The aim is that Train the Trainer's activity could generate a useful output to be applied in your actual training course. Now, let's look at a comprehensive systems, learning management systems, LMS, like Google Classroom. These platforms are solid. They calculate average, keep a history of every learner, and centralize materials, but they come with a cost. Setup time. You have to create the course, invite learners via email, and configure the parameters. So, apply an efficiency compromise. Use an LMS if you are managing a long course, weeks or months, or if you have a large cohort of participants where tracking individual progress is essential. But for a spot intervention or a small group, maybe manual system is way faster, more flexible, and just as effective for your purpose. I won't show you a tutorial on Google Classroom here. There are thousands of excellent tutorials online if you want to explore it. Also, check Module 4 of our handbook. It lists several tools, not just for grading, but specifically even for formative assessment. So, speaking of tools for formative assessment, digital interfaces facilitate the emergence of latent conceptions. They allow you to visualize opinions in real time or analyze cold data after the lesson. A classic example is the word cloud. I simply create a slide and ask, write what word you associate with safety. By example. I'm not testing their knowledge here, I'm mapping their perception. It's an assessment of their attitude towards a topic. Now, look at the result. The biggest word here is cost. Other words like rules or PPE are smaller. This tells me immediately that this group perceives safety primarily as an economic burden, not just a technical procedure. And that's okay. There's no right answer to an actual open question. This is precious data for me. Probably I need to address the economic aspect first to engage them. It helps me understand their concerns and decide which topics to delve into, or to exploit as a hook for the following contents. To summarize, assessment is not just about giving grades. It's also a compass, using invisible observation to correct your explanation on the fly, and, as the whole teaching design, a valid and a reliable assessment is not the result of talent and freestyle, but requires a structure. Rubrics and observational grades guide your teaching as long as they guide learners to clear and observable goals. So, download the Train the Trainer's Toolkit, start to design your first module, define your learning objective first, and then ask yourself, how will I observe if they are reaching this goal? Experiment with tools and try creating a tiny rubric today. Now, we have all the pieces, only one thing is missing: going on stage. What happens when technology fails? What happens when the discussion goes off track? In the next and final video, we will talk about the design of a lesson and managing the unexpected, as part of Module 5 of the course. See you there.